Hi everybody, Kyle from CMAC here. And in the last video, I went over some tips for filming better video with your phone. Today, I want to go over a couple of things in another app that I really like called Filmic Pro. Filmic Pro is an app available for iOS and Android. It costs about $15, and I know you might be thinking $15 is a lot of money for an app. What it does is unlock some really cool features for recording with your phone. So I'd like to go over some of that now. When working in Filmic Pro, one of the first things I like to do is go into the settings, the cog or gear icon in the bottom right. I can do things like change my resolution and frame rate, just like in the regular camera app. But what I can do here is also change the bit rate, how much data Filmic Pro is going to cram into each video file. So right in the middle, there's Apple Standard, and that means it's going to use as much data as the regular camera app does for this resolution. But I can tap the arrow to the right and go all the way up to something called Filmic Extreme, and I believe this is about 50 megabits per second in 4K video, which is a whole lot more data than what the regular camera app is doing. Now, if I tap on the outside of the menu, it's going to take me back to the main menu. And I can change my frame rate. Like I mentioned in the last video, 24 frames per second is the frame rate for movies. 30 frames per second is the frame rate for television, or traditionally has been for television. And 60 frames per second is kind of a modern TV look, or you can slow down your video. Now, when I'm in the 4K Ultra HD setting, I can max out at 60 frames per second. I'm going to record in 24 because I'm going to be working on a little short film with my phone. The other thing I can do is I can tap on 60 and capture at 60 frames per second, but play back at 30 or 24 frames per second. That means Filmic Pro is going to slow down my video for me. So if I record at 60 frames per second and play back at 24 frames per second, that's about a 40% speed change in the video. But I'm going to go back to 24:24. I also have a few more options in terms of audio. I can choose which microphone on my phone gets recorded, because the iPhone has a mic on the bottom, on the front, and on the back. And then I can change the compression type for that audio. PCM and AIFF are uncompressed audio formats. That means the audio is not going to get squeezed down, and I'll have that full audio data for editing. AAC is a compressed format, and that's what typically gets recorded in the regular camera app. I can also change the sample rate. 44.1 kilohertz is the standard setting for a music CD, but video is primarily recorded at 48 kilohertz. I recommend leaving it on that for video recording. There's also some checkbox toggles below those settings, like is the audio coming in through a Bluetooth microphone? I can check that off and on. Do I only want to record video only? Do I want to omit audio recording completely? I could check that. Automatic gain correction, I usually turn this off so that the phone itself isn't automatically changing the levels. I'll show you where you can change the levels manually in Filmic Pro. And voice processing. This is essentially an equalization tool. It's going to boost frequencies where the voice sits. So if you're recording yourself talking, voice processing is going to be okay. But if you're going to be recording audio that isn't voice, like music or sound effects, I would turn this off. Now, I'm going to be recording my voice, so I'm going to leave this on. Another thing I like to take a look at is the device settings. I like to set Filmic Pro to save to the camera roll. I lose some of the extra data, metadata about the clips if I do this, but it's going to make it easier for me to send my video clips into iMovie or LumaFusion for editing. The rest of the checkboxes in this section I pretty much leave standard. The next setting I take a look at is stabilization. Some of the lenses in iPhones and Android devices have optical stabilization, which is great. That means the sensor and the lens are going to be moving inside of the camera to help minimize shake. But others use digital stabilization. So I sometimes turn this off if things are looking a little wonky, if I'm doing some fluid motion with the camera. But I'm going to leave it on for right now. It tends to work pretty well on the optically stabilized lenses. And then under the camera section, I can choose which camera I want to record with. Now on my iPhone 11 Pro, I have 3 lenses on the back and 1 on the front, and I have all of those options here. Ultra wide, wide, telephoto, zoom, which is essentially the telephoto but zoomed in even further, or the selfie camera. Hi. There's a 6th option here too, double take. That's Filmic Pro's new app that lets you record with 2 cameras at the same time. I can record with the ultra wide and the zoom, or the regular wide and the selfie camera. It's really cool if you're doing interviews and stuff, or you're recording something that you can only get one take of. The app is still a little limited. As of this recording, it's a standalone app. They haven't worked this directly into Filmic, so you don't have a lot of the granular control I'm about to show you. But those are kind of the settings that I change in the Filmic app. When you're working with Filmic, you'll notice that there's a circle and a square on the screen. Now, these work similar to tapping and holding on the screen in the regular camera app in iOS. But in the regular camera app, both focus and exposure are both controlled with that one tap. Filmic allows me to move the circle and the square independently. The circle represents exposure, so I can set the exposure on something bright to make sure that my image isn't overexposed. And the square represents focus, so I can move the square around and put exactly what I want in focus. But the way that I like to expose and focus my videos is with this kind of icon that looks like a circle with another circle around it. Now I have a slider on each side of the screen. The left slider controls exposure. I can turn it up or down. The right slider controls focus. I can put exactly what I want in or out of focus right on the screen. Another thing I can control in Filmic is my audio levels. At the bottom center of the screen, there's time, battery, storage remaining, but also this little white slider. I can slide it to the left to turn the gain down, or to the right to turn the gain up. And I can see the changes that I'm making based on the audio meters on the screen. The last thing that I like to control with Filmic is my white balance. I can control the white balance by tapping on the Venn diagram in the bottom left corner. This tool lets me dial in exactly what white balance I'm working with. I can use any of the presets down at the bottom, or I can just grab inside of this space here and change the color. That's it. That's a quick look at Filmic on a mobile device. It gives you a lot more tools and a lot more control over your phone's camera so that you can really dial in your creative ideas. That's it for now. I'm Kyle from CMAC. If you found this helpful, give it the old thumbs up and subscribe to the CMAC YouTube channel. I'll have a tutorial on editing video in iMovie and in LumaFusion on mobile devices coming up next. And definitely check out the CMAC Challenge of the Week for prompts to get your creative juices flowing and get you creating videos. I'll see you next time. Shoo!